Hello hunters and welcome back to the TheSalawag's Why It's Great Gut Reaction, where I watch things and react from the gut. I've seen Oppenheimer. So good. Fiber. Hello hunters and welcome back to the TheSalawag's Why It's Great Gut Reaction, where I watch things and react from the gut. Just came back from seeing Oppenheimer with a friend. I had a really good time. It is a very long movie. I was very surprised that Florence Pugh and Emily Blunt were in this movie. I don't watch the trailers of movies anymore. I find that trailers, for some reason today, spoil entire films, and even though this movie is technically based on real history, I just didn't want any spoilers, so I didn't watch anything beyond the teaser trailer. But performance-wise, I think it's a wonderful circle in Cillian Murphy's filmography. That Cillian Murphy, who plays Robert Oppenheimer in this film, was in the movie Sunshine back in the early 2000s, right after he had done 28 Days Later. And he was playing the scientist who built the mega nuclear bomb that was supposed to restart our sun. In the plot of Sunshine, our sun is dying, and a new nuclear weapon is developed in order to create a chain reaction that will reignite our sun, and Earth itself is becoming an ice box because the sun is dying. And Sunshine is such a beautiful space movie, and I feel like this movie, Oppenheimer, the first half is such a cool, interesting look at the sort of politics and the building up of how we got the bomb from our side, but then built into the first half and what leads into the second half of the movie, which is the politics of the aftermath of dropping the bombs on Hiroshima. And you know, sort of, if you know about the Red Scare and the McCarthy era, this is kind of like, oh, this is what these people were experiencing at the time. That's what Oppenheimer's going through, is this witch hunt for all the communists, even though we're in a country that's supposed to welcome all religions and welcome all different belief systems. The communist was the enemy, you know. But was it not President Lincoln who said, we destroy our enemies when we make them our friends? Yeah, interesting. But anyway, so the film has this great introspective look at a piece of history, but also I really love that we get this touch and go view of Oppenheimer's personal life, that we see just a little bit of his romance life, and that centers around Florence Pugh and Emily Blunt. And I love Florence Pugh. I really loved Midsommar and Fighting with My Family, and what was the other movie that she was in? There was just a series of movies I'd seen in the exact right order that was like, oh my God, Florence Pugh is the thing. She is the next big thing. And I just love that she was in this movie. It was a total surprise to me that she was in the film. And it's a smaller role, but she plays the first wife of Oppenheimer, who has some kind of madness going on. She's a bit of an intense character, intelligent but intense, and something's wrong with her emotionally. Where when Oppenheimer tries to do normal romantic things like bringing flowers, she takes it very offensively and throws them away. And it's a very interesting character trait. But now let me say this, because I am me, I am a dude, I'm just who I am. I love Florence Pugh as an artist. I really think she's a fantastic actress, and she's an actress as an artist. She reaches an emotional level in her movies, and I feel this especially with Midsommar. she gets to a place that just feels so authentic and emotional and real that I'm just like, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. And I think that's what makes her one of the great actors of right now, of the younger up and coming, you can say, because she's younger up and coming actresses. Not like she's a teenager or anything, but yeah, she's probably around my age, 30s ish, something like that, late 20s, early 30s ish, that kind of established but experienced. And she's really something of an artist. And as someone who appreciates Florence Pugh, I feel I got to appreciate all of the beauty that she is in this movie. Hmm. Oh yes. Oh yes. Mwah. Thank you. Thank you, Christopher Nolan. Thank you, Florence Pugh. Mwah. Mwah. Wow. She gets naked. No, but she really, man, okay, so spoiler alert, Florence Pugh gets naked in this movie, which is interesting because Nolan's movies, up until now, have been very non-sexual. I mean, there may have been a little this, little there, little hint of sexuality here and there in movies, but never any nudity or anything like that. Very, very much sort of for the general audience, very straightforward kind of filmmaking. But we get to see quite a bit of the beauty of Florence Pugh, who I already thought was beautiful anyway. And the scenes are so sultry. And what I love is that the first time it's quite matter of fact. It's a very basic sex scene, but it's quite matter of fact the way that it's shot. But it's just shocking that, oh, Nolan movie, nudity, sex scene, whoa. But as we see her more in these scenes where she's exposed, these are actually genuinely engaging scenes. I think I want to point it out because actually I do think this is one of the points of Christopher Nolan's growth as an artist, is that part of the strength of Memento and the Dark Knight trilogy and every Nolan movie we love, my favorite still being The Prestige, is that Nolan likes to take the subjective point of view with the film. And what that means is that you don't see anything that the main character doesn't see. Everything that is experienced by the audience is what's experienced by the main character. And that's not just something that he found works for him, but that is what is a technique of storytelling from directors, storytellers, visual artists, the subjective voice. It's even an aspect of writing. When you read a book and the whole story is written as I did this and I did that, that's told from a subjective point of view of that person. So the subjective storytelling is the device that Nolan uses in every film. Even in Dunkirk, although we do get 6 different points of view, when we're in that point of view, we do not see another point of view. That's the most important thing. And that creates a very specific experience for the audience where they can feel the terror of the event that's happening. Now, Steven Spielberg had to learn that when he made Jaws, because when Steven Spielberg initially made Jaws, there was a mechanical shark. It just didn't work, and so he had all the footage of the points of view, but it was the editor who showed him, hey, use these point of view shots, and your movie still works. The drama is that now we're only in the audience's point of view, so the audience has to. Now we're only in the character's point of view because we don't have the shot of the shark. So now the audience gets the terror of what's happening without actually knowing where the shark must be. So that's something that Steven Spielberg learned, even though technically he had already used that technique with the movie Duel beforehand. But something like that, it is a choice. It's a choice to make that. But what I think is beautiful, again, circling back to the beauty of Florence Pugh, when we're seeing these scenes, and I'm on this chair backwards for a reason. Please don't imagine Cillian Murphy here, or maybe you should. There's a great scene where Emily Blunt, who is the second wife of Oppenheimer in this film, she's sitting behind Cillian Murphy playing Oppenheimer during when he's being grilled by a lawyer about his potential communist leanings, and one of the things he's being grilled about is his relationship with his first wife, who was a communist. And they bring up this affair that Oppenheimer had had with his first wife after marrying his second wife. And during this moment, it's this beautiful choice that Nolan makes where the camera's behind the lawyer that's grilling him, and in the background you see Emily Blunt sitting on a chair looking at the lawyer and looking at Oppenheimer, and in the middle ground you have Oppenheimer looking at the lawyer, but we're over the shoulder of the lawyer. Do I need to show you what an over the shoulder shot looks like? Looks like this. You're over the shoulder. Yeah. But anyway, so we're over the shoulder of the lawyer, and the camera goes from one side to the other side, one shoulder to the other shoulder. And within that, we have this edit where Oppenheimer is clothed, and then he is unclothed. And so, forget, we're in spoilers, but who cares? Whatever. I'm talking about art, okay? Spoilers. The camera goes from one side to the other, and we see Oppenheimer naked. He's exposed. And this subjectively is how he feels with what's being brought up. You understand? Like, it's not just a creative, cool shot. Because he did this same shot in Inception at the end when someone's using a mind trick to hide who they are, and the camera reveals that the character is actually talking to the mind trick person and not, but whatever, that doesn't matter. But that was a plot reveal that didn't have as much to do with the character, more to do with the mind trick character revealing that the mind trick character is behind this illusion, as opposed to, in this scene, it's used exclusively for emotional reveal, that we're seeing Oppenheimer feel exposed, literally. It's like the way you talk about when you dream, people, I mean, I've never had the dream, but people talk about having the dream where they're naked or in their underwear in front of people and everyone's laughing at them. This is visualized in the sequence, and I thought, wow, like, you actually went there. But also, it's sort of a key element that's consistent. Whenever Oppenheimer is with his first wife, Florence Pugh, they are always shown naked. There is a sense of a raw exposure, a raw emotion that's within him. And there's even a line that he has for her, which is, whenever you call, I'll be there. And it shows how much he truly loved her, but she was always sort of away from him and wouldn't give that love back in the same way. So they have this intense relationship that is ultimately unfulfilling for him, because she only loves him as much as she needs him, and he loves her more than anything, but not enough to keep being blown off all the time. Maybe being blown on, but it's something consistent. Whenever they're in scenes, they're often nude. And so this scene where the camera moves over the shoulder of the lawyer, at first the shot just shows the exposure, and you see in Cillian Murphy's performance the struggling to maintain his reserved nature, and I thought that's a beautiful performance part on Cillian Murphy. But then it goes further, because then we cut to a close up of Emily Blunt looking, and she's disturbed, and she's seeing Florence Pugh riding Cillian Murphy in front of everybody. And it's weirdly like beautiful, hot, and awful, and emotionally devastating. You see just how much this affair has rocked the relationship of Emily Blunt and Cillian Murphy, the Mr. and Mrs. Oppenheimer. It does so many things in one scene just with that visual, but also artistically, to have Florence Pugh doing these sexual motions, and have her and Cillian Murphy both be naked in front of this entire staff, It's so dirty and unsettling and kind of exploitative, but that's the point, because that's how these characters feel. This personal drama that really has nothing to do with politics, has nothing to do with spies or anything. Their personal drama is being pulled out to show how Oppenheimer is not a good guy and doesn't deserve anything. And really all it is there to burn these two at the stake for something that's unrelated. It has nothing to do with this affair. And that's how unfair the situation is for both of these characters, that they feel exposed and embarrassed in front of all these strangers. I just thought that to me, if you can't get more subjective than that. Now Nolan has gone beyond just what's in the character's heart, or what is the character seeing in terms of perspective, and now he's literally inside the mind of the character. What is hurting the character is being visually displayed, but without some kind of fancy effects of any kind. And I just love that somehow in this scene, because there is a very careful choice of color palette as well. Whenever we're in these sort of post World War II Senate hearings, and Oppenheimer being grilled by the lawyer and being sort of investigated by these people, there's this very desaturated, cold, very sterile quality to the world. But when Florence Pugh appears, she is very saturated and youthful and beautiful looking, and also looks kind of demonic. It's at the same time. It's almost too much. It's a very unsettling image, especially when Florence Pugh actually makes eye contact with Emily Blunt. It's such a engaging, emotional, scary sequence. It goes beyond, oh my god, Florence Pugh is naked. It's just like, wow, you've made an emotional, artistic choice in a scene that didn't require it, but really benefits from it. And especially because at the point that happens, we have not delved into all the history of the drama of the characters yet. Florence Pugh had been introduced in the movie, but this happens fairly early on in the movie, I think within the first half, and we haven't seen the further down the line story of what happened with Florence Pugh's character. So very much it's kind of a femme fatale red herring of like, what's the deal with this woman, this sort of scary woman. It's something. I gotta say, I just, for Nolan to go there, that's just so creative, and just it really, it puts the characters in such a place where I think the performances are very interesting, and it makes the finale of the movie so much better, because you realize the film starts off with this quote or not a quote, but this bit of text saying, Prometheus gave man fire, and the gods punished him for eternity for it. And that's essentially what this movie is about. That Oppenheimer gave America the atom bomb, that came with some fame and success and accolades, but it ultimately also came with the jealousy and the witch hunt and why are you famous and not me when I'm the one who hired you? You know, a lot of this stuff, and it's very interesting because I had just watched this podcast with Chaz Palmineri, who was in Usual Suspects amongst many other movies. I only really know him from Usual Suspects, so I suck. As a film buff, I suck. A filmmaker, I'm not bad, but film buff, I'm terrible. It's him and another guy. I forget the guy's name. I deeply apologize. But I'd watched a bit of their podcast together, and it's The Wise Chaz with the Wise Guy. Very good podcast, but they were talking about rules of life, rules of success, and one of them is don't outshine the master, meaning don't outshine your boss or your teacher or you'll pay for it. And essentially that is what this movie was about, was that Oppenheimer created this amazing thing, and the guy who put him into connection with everyone he worked with that eventually made this possible had this great jealousy about the fact that he didn't get quoted for anything, even though he is as much responsible for the success as anybody else. But Oppenheimer is the one who physically did it. So that's the thing, is this grand jealousy. And also, when we see the first half of the movie, you can see Oppenheimer has these personality traits, and an ego that's unmistakable. And you can see how people will be rubbed the wrong way by that. And that's something I relate to as well. Certainly in my younger days, I was much less interested in tact in how I spoke to people, and now I'm much more respectful and better at talking to people. But anyway, like I related to these aspects of the character. I really related to Cillian Murphy's performance. I hope he did an accurate job to Oppenheimer. I hope this is something that people would say, hey, yeah, pretty spot on. And Robert Downey Jr., let me tell you, really disappeared into this role. He did the opposite of the Tropic Thunder this time. This time, only very rarely, just when I could hear Downey Jr.'s actual voice, did I go, haha, it's you again, haha, you know. But for the most part, I thought he really disappeared into the role. It was one of those moments of like, you know what? This is why you're famous as Iron Man. You know, it's because you really do got the stuff. And it was really cool seeing Iron Man versus Scarecrow. That's what this movie really is. And of course, the DC filmmaker makes the DC character win. Haha, party lines do exist, even in nerdism. Anyway, but that's all stupid. But all that being said, okay, so I've celebrated Florence Pugh, and I've talked a little bit about how good the acting is. And Matt Damon, I thought this was a great role for him. It's kind of like, this is a role that normally would go to Brad Pitt or some actor who always plays the military guy. That Matt Damon had a great role here. It's cool seeing him as the seasoned supporting cast member. It's kind of like Good Will Hunting, where you're seeing Robin Williams be the therapist for up and coming Matt Damon. It kind of feels like that, where although Cillian Murphy is not a young kid, it's kind of interesting seeing the movie and that kind of like, oh, here's the guy who was once the young kid with the other guy who was also once the young kid, and they're both older players now, and they're playing mature roles that they should be playing, you know. I think I always hate that in Hollywood movies, when you can tell when a blockbuster's Hollywood when nothing quite makes sense. And I'm gonna piss off Amazing Spider-Man fans right now because I love it. I just love pissing off Amazing Spider-Man fans so much. But you know, Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone had already moved on from playing high school characters and had been playing college or post-grad characters for about 2 to 3 years before they were cast as high schoolers in Amazing Spider-Man. So when that movie came out, I could not think of anything but bullshit. And I couldn't help but think, look, you already have a movie you already had the trilogy with these guys as teenagers. Just move on. Let the ball be moved forward. Andrew Garfield should have been playing it at least post-grad Spider-Man, still struggling to make it work, you know. And same with Emma Stone. It's like, you guys are already playing adults in other movies. I hate you guys playing high school kids when you're both about to be 30. That makes no goddamn sense. So I appreciate in a movie like Oppenheimer, you know, where the Hollywood bullshit is not allowed. You know, I think I feel like blockbuster movies used to still have some sense of that, you know, but it just feels like we've, especially in the post-remaking movies that just came out era, that's how I feel about Amazing Spider-Man. It was the beginning of rebooting movies that just came out a couple years ago because we want to retain that IP. Like, good Lord, you know what I mean? Come on. It's just so tasteless and bad. That's why we're rebooting Transformers. Also, 5 minutes after Transformers just had its final movie, and you're really still just remaking Transformers 2007 again. So bullshit, you know. That's what I say. But I appreciate that, you know. It's funny. I only bring this up because at the end of the movie, the guy I was sitting next to, who was with his girlfriend, turned and went, "Hey, do you think there's an end credit scene?" And I said, "No, Christopher Nolan don't really believe in that sort of thing." And he went, and then he looked at the credit and Christopher Nolan's name came up and he went, "Ah, it is Christopher Nolan. Okay, cool." And then he left. I was like, wow, yeah, because that's one of Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan does not believe in end credits, and if there is an end credit, then I'll be sad that I didn't catch it. Don't tell me in the comments. I'm just going to Google it and be sad later. But I appreciate that, you know, here's a movie that is a big movie. This is a blockbuster movie, even though in many ways it still feels like an independent artistic piece. I appreciate that here we have this movie with all these stars, all these big names, and it's made with some level of artistic integrity. The fact that Nolan is still pushing himself creatively, that there's something new and fresh to be discovered. I feel like, well, really, I left the movie thinking this should have been 2 movies, because I would happily have watched just all the testing, and then the second movie could have been the bombs and I do feel like there was 2 movies of material here that were crammed into one. I really think this should have been more of a Kill Bill Volume 1, Volume 2 type of deal. But again, this is artistic taste and choice, and it is not unusual for directors to want to do epics that are very long. Christopher Nolan benefits from not having the director's cut and not having deleted scenes, because he wants you to have that old school experience where the movie's the movie and that's all you get. Because once upon a time, that's all you had. And so I appreciate that he does that. It's very much the anti-Star Wars special edition. And just like the no end credits thing, because there is a quote, and I don't know, it may not even be real, but I read it somewhere once where he said a real movie wouldn't do that. But I completely disagree with that quote because of Ferris Bueller. I'm like, tons of comedy movies have end credits and they're still legit movies. I don't think they're not movies because they're comedies, but that's his rules. That's the rules that work for him as a storyteller. And I think artistically, Oppenheimer, and what do I gotta say about the rest of the movie? Who cares? It's a good movie. Okay, I'm not here to talk about the movie as a whole and talk about things that everyone else has said 100,000 times. You know, wow, it was pretty good, but it was pretty long. Ah, it was pretty good, but it was pretty long. And well, no, I'm not. I'm tired of that, and you don't need to hear that either. But I really appreciate Nolan's artistic growth with going into nudity, but not wasting it, not making it. It was exploitative, but only as it felt for the characters. Because in the scenes with Florence Pugh and Cillian Murphy together, the scenes where they're nude and they're the first scene is awkward, but the second scene, you see that there's a level of comfort that these two have that goes without words. And the only thing that really can explain that is the nudity. That they have a comfort with each other that cannot be expressed through words, only with the fact that they can bear all to each other. That is what the picture is worth 1,000 words means. Is that mise en scene, everything in the frame tells the story. That's goes back to the beginning of film. The fact that they can both be nude with one another means they can bear all to each other and be comfortable with it. And that is powerful storytelling. You know, the nudity is not just there for gratuity or whatever. It is a form of expressing the story. That is the most important thing. So even though I'm sitting here drooling like a slobbering dog over an actress who I really do respect, this is why I respect her, you know, because she is committing to the art, and that this is about the art. That at the end of the day, yeah, there's drama between two guys, and one of them's gonna win out, and you're gonna feel one way or the other at the end. That's how movies work. I'm not interested in saying the same thing that everyone else says. I'm interested in that one scene or that one moment or that one choice that truly speaks to the level of the filmmaking of what's going on. And for me, that was it. I just feel like whenever Nolan has gone crazy with his ideas, like Tenet, okay, you know, it's cool that you want to do this weird timeline thing that kind of, you're going back to the Matrix, but now you're the Matrix Reloaded, I guess, because Inception was the Matrix for you. Now we're in the Matrix Reloaded with Tenet. It's cool to do big, heady ideas. Go for it. High concept is always fun, but I'm always really interested in when artistic choices are made that express how characters feel. Because when you have actors who are at the caliber of Cillian Murphy and Emily Blunt and Florence Pugh, I don't want to see their talents wasted. Let me tell you about happiness. Happiness is a warm donut. Happiness is a warm donut. Mochi nut nut. Mochi nuts with some boba. Happiness is a warm donut with some boba. Mochi nut. They didn't ask for this, but I put those donuts in my mouth and enjoyed it. Oh, God, I enjoyed it. With some boba. Mochi nut. These ads is whack, man. Again, this is what a blockbuster should be. This is going back to when blockbusters could be movies about either real things or about real people with no powers who just have to deal with the situation or figure something out. And the reality of that this was a job, you know. In reality, the scientists were like, I would never build a bomb, and yet you're asking me to. And it's only because I'm the most qualified person to do it. I love that we still have a movie out there that's about reality. Now, although Nolan's, I do feel, is one of my masters, I don't always agree with everything. I like the obsession with film. I'm glad he's championing film. I'm glad he's still doing that. But to me, it's things like that, or things like real movies don't have end credit scenes. I don't really agree with these things personally. I feel like, yes, real movies do have end credit scenes. There's nothing wrong with that. Digital's totally fine with me, because you know what? You shoot it all on film, it's still going on a digital projection. People are going to watch it on a digital television. It doesn't really matter when digital can now do what film now can do better, what film never could do. To me, I have these little disagreements, but it doesn't mean that Christopher Nolan's not still my master, that he's not still someone I'm learning from. And to watch him learn and reutilize his tools again, the over-the-shoulder shot just to reveal Cillian Murphy being nude and feeling exposed. I thought if he had not done anything else, I would still have been happy with that moment because of its artistic honesty. You know, that he's telling the perspective of Cillian Murphy without making Cillian Murphy do like, you brought up that? Oh. You know, and I know these tricks actors always use the little lip thing when they're you know, they're feeling it but they're not feeling it, so they use it's one of those things. The affair. Oh my God. You know, none of that bullshit. You know, I don't give a shit about that. You know, I don't care. You know, I like when, you know, this is why it's a director's medium, because whatever's in the camera is going to be how the audience feels about it. And totally, audiences don't give a shit about the lame, overacted drama. Except in Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, people just eat that up. But, you know what I mean? Like, it would have been an obvious drop in film quality if they were like, what about Florence Pugh? And instead of the nice over-the-shoulder shot where he's naked now, we just get a close-up of Oppenheimer just going, what, Florence Pugh? I've never heard of her. Now I'm Shia LaBeoufing it. And then close up on Emily Blunt just going, Florence Pugh? You know what I mean? Like, people would have totally just been like checked out if tears started falling and they just started overacting because, well, they triggered me, so I'm a triggered person. But that too is part of the clue of the character, where multiple times you see RDJ, who plays Strauss, who, again, he's the guy, Robert Downey Jr. plays the guy who initially hires Oppenheimer to be a teacher and all these things, and gets him connected with all the very people he would later hire and work with on building the atom bomb. So again, he's a hugely important character in the shaping of everything. But you know, when you see Robert Downey Jr.'s perspective, you can see this personal sense that he's being abandoned and neglected and all of these things. Even though that may not really be what's happening, he's just sort of misinterpreting what's going on with the character. And he's dealing with a larger-than-life personality as well. And that's a lot to deal with for someone who's maybe a little calmer edged. But you see, he never shows his hand. Robert Downey Jr.'s character never shows that he thinks he's been slighted by Oppenheimer. But we just see in the little reactions that that's how he feels. But it's something that's a personal shot of the actor. That's not Oppenheimer noticing that it's occurred. That's a cutaway, it's a close-up where you just see Robert Downey Jr. like, is this guy like dissing me right now? But it's a look. It's something that you can pick up on your own, but he's not showing it to the other character. A lesser movie does that, and sometimes people do that, but that's not who these characters are. what I love about Nolan's characters is that they always are people who kind of hold their cards close to their chest and don't show you everything they're feeling and thinking, which I think is just as real as anything else. I think there are some people who wear everything out on there. I certainly am someone who, for the most part, if I feel it, I'm saying it. You know, for the most part, I wear my feelings on my chest because I realize I'll pay for it more later if I don't. But on the other side, I also know when to hold. Every now and then, I know sometimes you don't need to show everything. Sometimes you just need to be cool and get through the moment. And that's something I've just gained as getting older. You know, in my 20s, I couldn't do that. In my 30s, it's becoming a skill that's increasingly more important. And as you get older, it's the skill that people can read off of you from. And it's not like I've got it down. I'm still working on it, but it's something that the movie deals with in a very indirect way, such as after the, and spoiler alert, but also I don't care that it's spoilers because all of this is history anyway. In the movie, after the 2 bombs are dropped in Japan, Oppenheimer meets Harry Truman and the President Truman, and he's just shaking and he says, I feel like the blood of these people is on my hands. And Truman, played by Gary Oldman, yeah, I don't know if he's doing a good job or not. I'm just happy to see Gary Oldman. And Gary Oldman, and you know, it's interesting because we only see Gary Oldman in this sort of wide or medium shots in the scene until Oppenheimer says, I feel like I have blood on my hands. And then we get a close-up of Truman, and you see that he's pissed. And he thinks, do you think they care? Do you think the people in Japan care who built the bomb? No. They care about the person who dropped it on them, and that's me. And he then tells Oppenheimer to get out of his office, and as the door is shutting, is like, don't ever let that crybaby in this office again. And, you know, I don't know how real any of that is, but I just thought that is what I'm talking about right now, where it's like Harry Truman is the guy who made the, and President Truman is the guy who made the call, and he's cool as a cucumber. He's not going to show his cards about how hurt or conflicted or guilty he might feel, especially because of in his position, he can't show that type of weakness. But also, that's a certain type of mentality, the old school mentality, where you don't show your emotions. Old school man mentality, masculinity, you don't show your emotions. You don't do that. You know, you just get the job done, and that's what it is. And so for Oppenheimer to be so openly emotional in that moment, although he's not, you can just see that he's kind of shuddered and shaken. That's all Truman needs. President Truman's just like, okay, well, screw you then. Because also, you can kind of understand from President Truman's point of view, it's like, no, I'm the one that killed these people. I am the one who did that, okay? Not you. So I don't have any pity for you. And that's such an interesting point of view as well, because very much like in Star Wars, good and evil is a matter of point of view in a lot of cases. That's what that scene's about. It's about the point of view of who's really responsible for what, you know. And at the same time, it's partially competition. Well, the Germans are making it, so we've got to make it. The Russians already developed it, so we got to make the bigger, better, badder one. And and everyone's just holding their cards. The truth is, everyone's just scared. You know, the Japanese are trying to conquer China. You know, Germany is trying to conquer Europe. But everyone's just scared and don't really know what to do, and they're just listening to whoever's above them. And whoever's above them is the one that's making the call. And everyone's just scared, running around either doing what they're told or telling other people to do what they're told because they're told to do it. And it's just this complicated mess of people who are hiding their cards or trying to get someone else to reveal their cards, and very much the card game metaphor is what's happening with these with this procedure that Oppenheimer is facing. The whole movie, he's being interviewed. He's being interviewed in the future after the bombs have been dropped. He's being interviewed as to whether he's a communist spy. That's the overall present day narrative of the movie. That we're using that structure, we bounce back to the past and show the building of the bomb. But very much that entire present day narrative where Oppenheimer is being grilled by the lawyer and by this I don't even know what the heck they're called, but the bad guy from 6 Days in it, so whatever. And the bad guy from Terminator Genesis, who's also the good guy from Terminator Genesis. But anyway, this entire interview where Oppenheimer is being grilled about his communist associations, it's a card game where all the interviewers and the lawyer wants is for Oppenheimer to say, yes, I'm a spy, blah 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 blah, and Oppenheimer's adamant, like, no, I was just doing my job and I've never been a communist, and yes, I associated and thought some of their ideas were interesting, but that's it, that's all. There's really not more to it than that. It's a card game, and they're, each one of them is saving their best card for last. Everyone wants to win the card game. And I really love Emily Blunt's character. Is so complex and dark, and she's not nude. It's interesting. She's as beautiful as that woman is. She's not nude or anything like that. But she's very sharp and very smart, and she's the last person interviewed, and you see why as a character she's on the level for Oppenheimer to be marrying her. And her scene with the lawyer is probably one of my favorite 5 minutes in the entire movie as well, where she's just so sharp and wicked. It's like, hell yeah, I love that. So anyway, I'm hungry and I really want to smoke something. So that's all I've got to say for today. Thank you for watching, and aloha. Don't build bombs. Build something nice. Love you, Florence, Pugh.